You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of truth. A dimension of freedom. A dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the Capitalist Corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the Capitalist Corner.
Welcome, folks, to the Capitalist Corner. Today is No-Gi Thursday. I am your host, Mark Pellegrino, and also the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, along with my co-host and vice chair, Mr. Michael Liebowitz, who is helming this amazing station, otherwise known as the Rational Alternative. And Michael, you're going to tell us about the Rational Alternative while I post this on Twitter, please. Thank you.
I am going to tell you about it. So I've got an interview up right now with a young man named Man Sharma. We're discussing the status of the Liberty Movement in an ongoing series that I'm doing. And of course, Saturday, I'm with Megan Ribbons on the Rational Alternative Weekend. We're going to be discussing the science in the Middle Ages. Then on Sunday, I've got members only content. And of course, Mark, you and I are here every weekday, 12 Eastern, 9 Pacific, breaking down the news of the day from a pro-capitalist perspective.
Otherwise known as a rational perspective, Michael.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, and we also I don't know if you said this because I was busy dealing with this insane puppy here. Did you talk about Self-Made Soul at all?
I did not mention Self-Made Soul because you told me to talk about this channel.
Is that a separate thing? Is that mine?
Yeah. How do you not know?
Oh, well, dude, I don't know. I don't know. I just assume what's mine is yours.
Well, not so much.
Not so much me. I don't know. All right, Michael, we got a big news day to cover today. Lots of stuff to talk about. Did you want to talk about the Comstock Act and all this busybody stuff going on in government right now first? Because it's first thing up.
Yeah. Well, first I want to bitch. Can I bitch a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to bitch a little bit. So today, everything was going fantastically.
Okay.
Right? I was done with everything I needed to be done with by 11:15.
Okay.
And I'm like, wow, this is great. I can now go back over all the articles from this morning so I can really be ready to get this.
Nice.
Next thing I know, I get a text from my boss. He says, he sent me 3 reports to do. And he said, in this one, they want right away.
Yummy.
Okay, so I go look at it. There's 15 permits to the job. Now, this is 11:15, and they need it right away, which means before 12. So I had to do that. And then I go to do the next one. But sometimes when they send the addresses for like a condominium complex, it's all mixed up. Long story short, I go through the whole thing, and I push it right up to where I'm running here to say, hey, Mark, here I am. No ability to reread the articles from this morning, but I think we could still put on a great show. But, that's what they say. What do they say? Man plans, God laughs, whatever, some other corny saying.
Yes. When
Jim wants me to plug on the Rational Egoist right now, the last ever episode and the last episode in the series Jim and I did on using OPAR for self-help. This episode is about happiness. It's on the Rational Egoist, and you really, 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 really should be checking it out. Mark,
it was good. I heard.
What do you mean you heard part of it?
Well, didn't you post some of it on X?
You saw a clip?
I did see a clip. It was very good.
And that's what you equate with seeing part of it?
Yeah, of course, because
you know what I'm going to do from now on? When a new movie of yours comes out, I'm going to watch a clip, and I'm going to say, I saw part of it.
That's all that matters. All you have to do anyway is see my parts, fast forward, bullshit, then see my parts. Anyway, Mark. Michael.
I'm not Mark.
I know.
And now look at this. And now, Megan, this is what happens. Now, Megan wants me to plug the education episodes that we did on the Rational Alternative Weekend. Yes, those are there on the station as well. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like me to plug
Don't
something?
ask that question, Michael.
Maybe a 5th grade teacher. Do I have a 5th grade teacher out there that needs something plugged?
We're also streaming on Twitch, guys, and I want you to like and subscribe to this channel, please, because we think this message needs to get out there into a very wide audience. And Michael really loves the super chats and super stickers.
Yes, I do, because can I tell you why I love them?
Well, you can tell me in a minute. I'm fond of them because they just come in different colors, right? I like seeing the different color pop up in the chat. It's nice. But why do you like them?
Because I'm poor.
Ah, that explains it, of course. All right. So, Michael, should we go first on the list here? Government.
Yeah. What is Jim? Yeah, Jim is trying to unload a car now. All right. So, Jesus Christ. So Elizabeth Nolan Brown writes this article today in Reason magazine on antitrust, and evidently Trump's new Department of Justice nominee wants to ban online porn and prosecute big tech. His name is Adam Kandub or Kandiub. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But he serves as the general counsel for the Federal Communications Commission. He also wrote for the what the hell was that project?
Project 2025.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Project 2025 for the Heritage Foundation.
Heritage Foundation's monstrosity.
And he wants to restore obscenity regulation in an internet age. You know, all this types of stuff. Basically, he wants to be the moral police. You know how these busybodies are. You know, they find Jesus, and then it's not enough for them to sit there and wallow in their own faith. They want to impose it on the world. This is undermining marriage and yada, yada, yada. Look, mind your fucking business, dude. Right?
Amen.
If some guy wants to jerk off to some nonsense on the internet, that's not your concern. And the fact that you do concern yourself with that stuff is just weird, man. It really is. It's bizarre.
The relative health of a person's marriage is not this guy's responsibility.
Yeah.
It's the couples who are married who have their own conditions, Michael, that this guy isn't privy to. You know?
Right.
Look, truth is stranger than fiction. A man could be using porn for a number of reasons. And,
I don't know why, and I don't care.
And it doesn't matter, right? Whether it's consensual with his wife or whatever the nature of their relationship is, the health of the marriage is none of his fucking business.
No, it's not. Nor is the public morality or public decency. Keep that in your church, dude. Go to church, say your Hail Marys, do whatever the hell it is you have to do, eat the wafer. I don't know, and I don't care. But, you know, people will say to me sometimes, Mark, why do you have to preach about atheism? Why can't you just let people believe what they want? I don't give a damn what goes on inside people's skulls. The problem is it very rarely stays inside their skulls. They want to take it out of their skulls and use the force of the state to make the rest of us comply with their vision of how people are supposed to behave. Yes. I too have moral views, and I think I could validate and justify mine a lot better than this guy can justify his, but I don't think it's the job of the state to force people to comply with my moral views, other than to not use force against people without them using it first.
Also, Michael, it's not up to these politicians, particularly the Department of Justice, to raise our children for us. If you want your child to stay off of the internet, or if you want to restrict the content that they're able to ingest on the internet, if you are a parent, that's your freaking responsibility. And Michael, frankly, the market could solve problems like this, to be honest with you. It could provide apps and devices that the parents can track their kids, where the parents could actually regulate the content of their kids, or frankly, try to keep them off cell phones at a very early age.
Well, this guy says, first he talks about that the big tech has avoided antitrust laws, and it's not entirely clear to him why. But he says, after all, social media makes Americans less happy. And the FTC should be open to behavioral explanations, such as habit and small hedonic differences, as key to how platforms create and keep market power. How about you worry about your own damn happiness and not stick your nose into mine, right? If I'm miserable, I'm miserable, and it's not your business.
Right.
But the funny thing is, I tend to think, Mark, that people that want to do this stuff, get into other people's bedrooms. It's weird shit. And I think that they've got to be unhappy. But the country, we've got a long history of this. You mentioned, of course, the Comstock laws. The Comstock laws were passed in 1873. It criminalized the use of the U.S. postal system or common carriers to send obscene materials. And it was named after the anti-vice crusader, Anthony Comstock. The statute classified pornography, contraceptions, and any devices or medications used for abortions as illicit. The law was formerly titled Act for the Suppression of Trade in and Circulation of Obscene Literature and Articles of Immoral Use.
Unbelievable. Michael, he was like the postmaster general or something along those lines, where he could actually control what was being sent through the posts. And my question for anybody in the audience who may know this: what did Mr. Comstock do with all of the articles that he confiscated? Because he did confiscate photographs, illicit material, other devices that were sent through the mails that he deemed to be immoral. Because my thought, Michael, and I don't mean to cast aspersions on this guy. He was
cast aspersions. No, he needs aspersions cast on him.
I think he kept it. I think he had a little secret room where he kept these illicit photographs, and he probably did things with them. I'm not going to say specifically what, but our
some
audience
weird
can
stuff,
use their
weird
magic.
stuff, weird
No
weird
doubt.
stuff. So I was looking for a succinct history of the government's attempts to regulate, immoral behavior. And so I hate when that happens to me.
You lost it?
Yeah, but I got it back. So we've had alcohol prohibition, 1920 to 33.
Wait, what did that do, Michael? Did that stop alcohol use?
No, consumption dropped initially, but rebounded via bootlegging, organized crime, and expanded massively. Wait. There's more.
Oh, but I wanted to continue on the prohibition thing.
We're gonna. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, good.
They lost tax revenue. Poisoned moonshine caused deaths. And finally, it was repealed by the 21st Amendment. The only amendment ever to be repealed was the 18th. Do you have something to add about the alcohol prohibition?
Just that it made people go to a black market where there was no incentive to produce less potent alcoholic beverages. So they produced the most potent they could. Bathtub gin, which oftentimes killed people or made them blind. And it also, Mike, incentivized a little known group of thugs it's primarily local Italians who, protected their own in their neighborhoods. It incentivized them to become an international crime syndicate.
Are you casting aspersions on Italians, or are you just trying to talk more like Trump? A little known group, not many people have heard of them, the Mafia.
Called the MAB. Yeah,
okay.
I can, because I have an Italian name. I can do whatever I want.
Oh, I like that. I'm up for that. That's cool. My mom's Italian. Okay, either way, or she was Italian. She hasn't been Italian in a long time because she died, almost 20 years ago. Either way, drugs. The Harrison Act, 1914, began federal drug regulation. Then the Marijuana Tax Act in 1937, the Controlled Substances Act of 1970, and of course, Nixon's War on Drugs of 71. What were the results of this, you may ask? Well, the United States incarceration rates exploded. We've got the highest in the world. Drug potency and violence in black markets increased. So there you go. More not good things. Gambling, we've got widely banned or restricted state by state through the 20th century. Illegal numbers games and bookmaking flourished as a result. What happened with prostitution? Oh, another attempt by these people, because they just can't stand that other people are doing things that they disapprove of. It was pushed underground, associated with trafficking, violence, of course, minimal reduction in prevalence, however. Now, here's some really good ones, Mark. Sodomy laws. Because heaven, I don't want to get into it, but heaven forbid, these people, like, who the hell worries about that kind of shit? But state sodomy laws targeted homosexual conduct, and also, by the way, heterosexual conduct, persisted until 2003 with Lawrence v. Texas. There were decades of selective enforcement, stigmatization, civil rights harms, with negligible public safety rationale. So the government does have a history of doing idiotic stuff, and they also have a history of not accomplishing much. So we do have $2 from Wyatt 516.
Sharps for New York Save Wealth Fund. Here's ACP on.
Where's a American capitalist on a sovereign wealth fund?
Sovereign Wealth Fund. Okay.
He wants to know where we stand on the issue, and I'm not entirely sure because I haven't really looked into it.
Nor have I.
So I would really have to look into it before I give an opinion on it.
Likewise.
Okay, I have to. I want to answer a question, but you go first. Go ahead.
Well, Michael, if anything, prohibition has shown us there's no way you can stop. You can stop a market for something where there's a demand. What you can do, though, is introduce more violence and more problematic behavior by criminalizing stuff that people will consensually do with each other. And that's precisely what happens when you criminalize prostitution, for example. These women have to solicit on the black market, which subjects them to shady characters, that they can't vet, who are very violent. They're outside the system themselves, so they can't really appeal to anyone but, let's say, a pimp who's going to protect her, because they can't appeal to the authorities to protect her. They're going to throw her in jail. And so it just creates cycles of violence, Michael. And it's time to repeal this stuff, because what you do with your life is nobody's freaking business. It's right. Nobody's freaking business. And who you consensually engage with is nobody's freaking business. Go ahead.
Okay. Megan wants to know if I have ever read, or if you have ever read, The Closing of the Western Mind. She's reading it in preparation for Saturday, but it's hard not.
Is that Alan Bloom?
The Beliefs of Paul. I cannot remember who wrote the book, but I will tell a funny story related to the book, however, if you don't mind a quick digression.
Or it's Victor Davis Hanson. Okay.
It's not Victor Davis Hanson. Stop.
Didn't he do something with this?
I feel like is Victor Davis Hanson promoting you or paying you to promote him?
It would be great if he was, but I don't think he's got
I'll find out who the author is right now. Hold on.
And maybe I'm thinking The Closing of the American Mind was by Mr. Bloom.
Closing of the Western Mind, Charles Freeman. Okay, so circa 2005, Brent McCall and I, we used to get the Laissez-Faire Books catalog. Where Laissez-Faire Books, by the way, one of Jim Valiant's first jobs was he worked at Laissez-Faire Books. So whenever we would get the catalog, we would go through it and look for books that we wanted to order, and of course we would then order them. And one of the books in the catalog was Closing of the Western Mind. And I knew I wanted to read it, but Brent really, really wanted this book, right? So I told him I'd look into ordering it, and that would be it. So my plan was to order it for his birthday and then surprise him with it, which I did. So I ordered the book, and I had it in my cell just waiting for his birthday to arrive. But being the pain in the ass that Brent is, he says, hey, were you ever able to order that book? And I said, no, I tried, but they didn't have it. It's out of stock. It can't come, whatever. So now,
oh my God, I know what's going to happen. Go ahead.
Well, now he's on the phone with somebody, and he calls me over, and he says, Lieby, can you do me a favor? I said, what? He said, go upstairs and get the information for The Closing of the Western Mind. I'm just going to have someone order it for me off Amazon. And I'm like, this pain in my ass. So I had to go. I ran upstairs. I went and I got the book, and I brought it down and I gave it to him. Unfortunately, when he got transferred, he forgot it. So it is now in my basement,
where it is yet to be read.
I've read the book. Of course I have. And so is he. We had the book for years. This is 2005. We were selling till 2018 here.
Thank you, Greg Doherty, for the $4.99.
Yes, Greg Doherty is awesome.
Thank you very much for that.
Do you know there was some, let me tell you real quickly. Yes, Jim, it was a white lie. Thank you, Greg, for the alms for the poor. There was some schmuck this morning on Facebook. Something that really irks me is when people try to use the language, the type of language Ayn Rand used, but they use it in the service of the dumbest shit possible. So this guy is commenting on the film The Odyssey, which I have not seen. I want to see it, but, whatever. So the guy says the thing that bothers him about this movie, it's the value destruction. He doesn't like the value destruction involved.
Value destruction.
Value destruction. He says, first of all, with this Elliot Page playing Achilles, which he did not play Achilles. So he's wrong on the facts right off the bat. But then he says, and I don't have a problem with a black woman playing Helen of Troy.
But I do.
But the fact that he chose an ugly black woman just shows that his intention is value destruction. Okay, first of all, Lupita Nyong'o, many people find her to be absolutely gorgeous. Do you know who she is?
I'm looking her up right now because I'm sure I've seen her before.
Okay. So I responded and I'm like, okay, so because you find this woman unattractive, that means that Christopher Nolan cast her in order to destroy values.
She is objectively attractive. Sorry.
Yeah. But the guy is just a dumbass. But I find that type of shit frequently. Like you'll see people trying to advocate tariffs and saying, as Ayn Rand said, principles are contextual. No, dumbass, that's not what that means. That doesn't mean you can justify any idiotic policy that Daddy Trump wants to put forward.
Yeah, we're going to get to that one. That's bad. Yeah, I have not seen The Odyssey. I'm looking forward to seeing it, though. And I'd love to know, I'd love to judge for myself if there's value destruction. Or is he talking value destruction because Helen of Troy was black in this and she's a Mycenaean in the actual story? And is that what the value destruction is? Because a trans person plays a part, that's a value destruction?
That's part of it. Yes, that's part of it. Because she was playing, or he was playing Achilles, which wasn't true.
Right.
But why worry about facts when you're a moron online who can post things and try to pretend like you're smart with an IQ of maybe 85? I don't know.
Yeah, we need to cancel Kirk Douglas and Spartacus.
Did I screw up this morning?
In the 10 Commandments, not racially accurate. That's true, Captain Chandler. Absolutely not racially accurate.
Did I screw up here?
What are you talking about? Why?
I think. You just chat for a second.
Well, the next topic of conversation, Michael, is ICE, and they've been in hot water again. They just killed another unarmed civilian, somebody who is on his way to becoming a citizen, who had been living here for 35 years, had no criminal record whatsoever. He wasn't even the object of the stop or investigation, whatever it is that ICE claims to be doing out there in the streets. And they shot him in the belly, claiming that he was endangering the life of an officer. Of course, the people who were with him in the van contradict the statements. There were no body cameras on any of the officers because of I guess, budgetary constraints, Michael. And the officer who committed the act has a history of violence and issues that should probably have disqualified him from the outset from being in this kind of position. What say you, Michael? And we have, on top of this, ICE arrests are up. I mean, they're supposed to get somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 or so a month.
Yes,
for a week, rather. Sorry.
They're in 2025. They matched the record for people in detention by ICE, right? And it's looking like it's going to surpass the record this year with the amount of people. And like you said, so this guy, he's got all kinds. The shooter, the guy that worked for ICE, has all kinds of mental health problems, according to family, his ex-wife, his daughter. There's been reports he's threatening online. He had a concussion, some kind of concussion syndrome. He was previously in the military. He's been, let go from jobs. But they thought he'd make a great ICE agent, and he ends up shooting somebody. But what got me thinking about this was Gary Menard. Here he is, because Gary Menard talks a lot about ICE, and I think about, there's just so much that goes on in the world. We can't talk about everything all the time, and that's part of the Trump playbook. I don't know if it's intentional on his part, because I don't want to give him too much credit. But there's always something new.
Shotgun method, right? The shotgun, you just spatter everything out there.
Yes, there's always something new that it seems we have to talk about. Like the story I sent you, but I forgot to mention in the title, for instance, on the tariffs. Did you get that?
We got to talk about that. That's horrific.
Okay, good. So I looked into this, and ICE, evidently there's no official records, but the what's the word I'm looking for? Circumstantial evidence appears that ICE is more likely to engage in uses of force than are your regular police. ICE is more likely to engage in lethal force than are the regular police. So, not a very good agency. To me, look, you want to abolish ICE, it's simple. They're unconstitutional. Abolish them. I have no issue with that. Gary likes to talk a lot about the bad stuff they do, which of course I'm not detracting from that. I don't know that if you have two, like he cites the FBI right now, if you have two agencies that are both unconstitutional, my fear is that by just criticizing one based on how they conduct themselves, it seeks or serves to ultimately justify the other. Do you understand what I'm saying, Mark?
Sure.
So if we don't criticize the unconstitutionality of other agencies and we only criticize the ones that act up, it's like a sanction of the other ones.
Yeah, right? You're saying it's okay to be unconstitutional, provided you have these certain standards of action.
Right. I mean, the problem is with ICE is then they come and they say, no, these were justified, but they don't. They say they're not going to dox their employees, so they don't release who they are. We found out who this guy was because the shooter, because people recognized him, right? They don't release who the people are. A lot of times, like, they don't wear name tags. And not only that, but they don't keep track, or at least they don't release the stats of these types of things, what's happening. But then they want, just trust me, bro. No, sorry, bro. I'm not going to trust you.
Yeah, I think that's what makes America exceptional in the world, is that we look at government officials as serving us. We do not serve them. And we've always looked at politicians and we've looked at people in law enforcement with skepticism, right? We hold them to standards where they are to serve and protect us. I mean, that's the saying that every law enforcement agency projects, to protect and serve. And so in that respect, ICE, of course, which I'm against entirely, as I believe you are, Michael. We're against all of these super constitutional law enforcement agencies. But ICE in particular has no standards upon which the community can rely to measure whether or not they are carrying out their fiduciary responsibility to the citizens, which they clearly aren't. And Holman and Trump are hell-bent on continuing to enforce this policy of mass arrests and mass deportation all the way through the Trump administration.
And you know what's going up? The amount of people with no criminal records that are being detained.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit, Michael, as if we couldn't see that coming.
I just did.
No, but I mean, well, I thought you might have had a specific statistic in your head.
No, I just know it's going up. I don't have a specific stat, but it is going up. And it serves to reason that it would go up, because if you first target the serious criminals, there's only so many of those.
And then if you set quotas, Michael, at 2,000 arrests, is it per week? 2,000 arrests per week or something like that. You're eventually going to have to start sinking your teeth into the people who've committed no crime other than a violation of some immigration law.
What do you think about this here? Gary Menard says regular police do not routinely hire psychologically unstable. Do you think that's true?
Look, I think that the more powers that police have, the more it attracts that kind of person who's willing to bend and break rules in order to assert their authority over people. So it may have been the case at one time that they were less inclined to hire people like that, and I think there certainly are more stops in the traditional police departments for that. But remember, Michael, ICE went through a recruitment period where they were just trying to fill their ranks.
This is true.
And
this
they had a
true.
truncated system of vetting. So,
I agree. And I think that there's probably more of it in ICE than there are in the regular police departments. However, I mean, when I was 9 years old, let me just give you a quick story. I'll give you two stories. Both when I was 8, one when I was 8, one when I was 9. When I was 8 years old, my mother was brutally beaten by my father and my father's wife at the time.
Holy shit.
Right. They beat her in the middle of the street. It was I don't know what you call it. It's a dead end road with a circle at the end. And in that circle, they beat my mother in the street while onlookers just watched and it did nothing to help. So now I'm, 8, 9 years old and I'm upset about this. So I'm crying, of course. A cop grabbed me and shook me and told me to act like a man.
How old were you again? 9?
Maybe 8, maybe 9.
Lord have
maybe
mercy.
9.
Lord have
grabs
mercy.
me and shakes me and tells me to act like a man. That's one thing. Again, when I was 9, I lived in a project, so it's a duplex. And my friend and I were out. We were spray painting the shed, and we were arguing with the neighbors, the neighbor kids who lived in the same duplex. So we had a burnt piece of paper, and we put it in their windowsill. It wasn't lit. It was just a burnt piece of paper. We put it in there. So they called the police and said that we tried to set their house on fire, which would have been idiotic because it was my house too. So I'm not just going to burn theirs. And they also lied and said that we were throwing spray paint cans at them, which we weren't. So anyway, so we're out playing and a cop comes. It was a Korean guy, and you're going to see why that's relevant in a minute. So he comes and I said, can I help you, officer? He says, don't try to sweet talk me, punk.
Wow.
He says, what is your name? And I said, Michael Liebowitz. He says, that figures. This cop grabbed my friend and I, or my friend and me, by our shirts, one in each hand, lifted us off the ground and slammed us into the shed. 9 years old now, this cop's doing this. So we went to the police station and filed a report. So if that weren't bad enough, the cop to which I made my statement says to me, but Michael, he's Korean. That's what they do in his country. And I said, well, he's in America now.
Oh,
right?
my
He's not in Korea. And then the cop says, but Michael, if you file this, do you want him to not be able to support his family?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know, mentally unstable, whatever. Gary Menard says the ratio is my point. Regular police found psychologically unstable are removed in general. With ICE, they are just shuffled around. All I'm saying, Gary, and I'm not even disagreeing with you. When talking about this, I want to be clear. And people will say this is libertarian, whatever, don't care. Government is not known for being effective or efficient. There's no reason to suspect that because they call it the military or the police, that these wings of the government are suddenly going to act with peak efficiency and morality.
Absolutely.
Right? And it's up to us to monitor them and keep track of them. And by the way, I have the utmost respect for people who are on the police force, who serve with dignity and respect and do their job. And the same goes for the military. We need police. We need military to protect our rights. But we cannot simply, and Gary, I'm not saying you did this. I'm just saying we have to keep in mind that when government's involved, corruption, disorder, bad behavior is usually not far behind.
Which is why we don't empower them, Michael. We We strictly limit what they can do, and we strictly enforce rights for the individual citizen to protect them from, well, the obvious incentive of government to keep growing and to keep asserting its power over people. I've had run-ins with some shitty cops as well, Michael, where I've just been walking down the street going to my house, and a cop said something to me, and I'm like, and you know, in my, I remember thinking, this cop's actually picking a fight with me. It's like I could tell he wanted to do something to me, and it disturbed me because he's got a gun and a badge. I might have been just coming back from the boxing gym too. It's like, you know, and he was. I remember him saying something really snide, like, "Wow, that's fully unprofessional." I wish I could remember what it was because it was like 30 years ago, but it was pretty awful. And he wanted to like me to get piqued, and he wanted me to get mad, and you know, to initiate a confrontation. I could tell. I didn't bite. Anyway,
Mark,
Michael,
what is ACAB? Ray says he doesn't like applying the ACAB label to ICE. What's ACAB mean?
I don't know. Can you tell us, Race, what that is?
Okay. Before getting to Pickaxe Mountain, do you want to discuss Pickaxe Mountain first, or do you want to discuss the tariffs first?
No, let's save the tariffs a little bit. We'll talk about Pickaxe.
Oh, all cops are bastards is the label. I've never heard that before, and I don't think it's true. And not even close, not even true of ICE. That doesn't mean that ICE is good, though, as an organization.
Indeed. So, as everybody might know, with the drama unfolding in Iran, our administration has been picking and choosing targets to retaliate against Iran's blatant violations of international law and commercial shipping. So they're attacking points along the Straits of Hormuz where the Republican National Guard are staging attacks on commercial shipping. But Michael, they're also thinking about expanding their attack to a place called Pickaxe Mountain, which is a place about 150 or so miles outside of Tehran. It's at the other end of these nuclear compounds that were basically destroyed in the 12-day war and in the run-up to the American war with Iran. And it's basically a space where they think they've moved centrifuges to. The primary part of Pickaxe Mountain is about 100 to 200 feet beneath the surface of the mountain, and they think they're using this as the new place to enrich uranium and to pursue their uranium.
You're doing wonderful, Mark, but I want to just say, and this is why I wanted you to talk about it, because you are far better with geography than I am.
Go ahead.
But it's actually 300 to 450 feet deep is where the facility is.
So we're talking about 45 stories beneath the surface of the Earth. Trump, of course, is thinking about using two Buster bombs to break through there, because the Buster bombs apparently could plow through about 100 feet or so of Earth before they actually explode. He thinks a couple of them may damage this facility enough to render it unusable, but of course nobody knows if that will work. And this is supposedly the next target, Michael. What do you think of that? What do you think of this? I have my thoughts, but what do you think of this?
It seems that perhaps the bombs won't even do the job. So, I mean, that's the gist.
A waste of ordnance.
Right. If you can't do the job, then don't do it. It just doesn't make any sense. I think that this ultimately the modern, or the idea, I don't know if it's modern or not, it would have to be, that you can fight wars by just bombing. It's just not true. You just can't do it. And I think that we're going to find that out again and again and again and again.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it. You know, we can degrade their ability to enrich uranium, but so long as this administration or this regime stays alive and keeps people in the field enough to harass us from a distance, then this program is going to remain alive, because they have no intention of stopping. They've said it outright. At this point, they've said it outright. They have no intention of stopping. The only real solutions are twofold, Michael: to either get out or to take out dual use infrastructure, which means really hitting their power grids, really hitting their oil refining capacity, taking out bridges, to really precipitate a grave humanitarian crisis in Iran. And I don't think the administration has the will to do that. And
I think you are correct.
if they're not going to do it, then then they got to stop with these gestures, because it's not really solving the problem.
Yeah. So before we do the tariffs, I just saw something on Facebook, and it really this whole right wing culture war stuff. And there's some people who call themselves objectivists who are wound up in it, or it's very weird to me. Like the Cracker Barrel. Do you remember when there was the big controversy about the Cracker Barrel thing?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, like, I don't give a damn about that. I didn't even give a damn if Bud Light wants to put a trans guy as their promoter. Like, I don't think being like that, to me, that's similar to the Comstock stuff. Like, what is going on? I just saw, what made me think this, I just saw online that somebody says this is Nolan's selective, and he put it in quotes, version of the Odyssey, so he could put forth his own world.
Yeah, that's why he's directing it, because he wants to make it's his own project.
But every fucking movie I think I've ever seen that was based on a book or based on a historical account of something, it's always selective. What,
of course.
So why? That's what I mean. It's weird. Is why now do people get upset about it?
Michael, did you see
Hurricane?
Did you see Hurricane?
I think I did, with Will Smith.
No.
Denzel Washington.
Denzel Washington is about a guy who claimed to have been falsely accused of murder.
Hurricane Carter. Yeah.
Hurricane Carter, who was a great middleweight contender at one time, a really, really, really good boxer. This film was done by Norman Jewison, who's a Canadian filmmaker who made In the Heat of the Night. He's always been a very socially conscientious guy, and In the Heat of the Night is a great film that highlights real animus between the races in the South, and of course, under the circumstances in that movie, brings these two men together. My friend Rod Steiger, of course, played the part, one of the main parts there. But Hurricane, the movie, had a racist cop in it that basically railroads Hurricane Carter and is responsible by planting evidence and giving false testimony for getting this guy railroaded. None of it was true. None of it. It was a narrative device. That's all it was. It may have sparked enough interest in the Hurricane Carter case to get him exonerated, because I think he was eventually let go, Michael. I think he eventually got out of prison. I think he passed away sometime later, but he was let out of prison, and the evidence sort of suggests that he actually did commit the crime. But Norman Jewison was making his own story. All right, he's not obligated to tell the truth. He's obligated to tell a story, right? And that's the story that he wanted to tell. And if you don't like it, if you think that he needs to be married to the facts more, even though it's a fictional telling of a story, then you are more than welcome to write a review about it, to complain about it, to do anything you want, but just, leave the rest of us out of it.
Yeah, when there's a movie that's a biography, or even it always says based on a true story, not it is a true story. Yeah, Ray says Peter Jackson was selective about what he kept in The Lord of the Rings. That's what they always do, but all of the sudden people are it's just weird to me.
Michael,
it's really weird.
What's weird is that Peter Jackson didn't put in those pages upon pages of elfin songs where they're all around sitting together, singing these songs together that went on for pages and pages and pages. Wow, he's just not being pure to the material. Fuck off, literally, man. That would have been cinematically uninteresting.
Yeah, I think they should make a movie of Les Miserables where they go on and on about the sewer system in Paris. We just talk about how, look, we could be using this stuff for fertilizer. There's a lot better stuff. Or you can go into the history of the Order of the Nuns. That would make for great film. It's just idiotic. But I just don't even think that's the real reason. It's this idea that we have to be outraged by something. It's just strange, and I want no part of it. It's
Look, both of
bizarre.
those actors that they've singled out from the Odyssey are very fine actors. Elliot was a fine actor as a woman, is a fine actor as a trans man, and Lupita she was great in Us, and she was great in the movies that I've seen her in. I think she was in wasn't she in 12 Years a Slave?
I've never seen it. I don't know. I know who she is. I don't
I
know if
think
I've
she's
ever
like
seen
the
a movie with her in
persecuted
it.
slave that this one plantation owner, played by Michael Fassbender, who's also a tremendous actor, was psychopathically obsessed with. He tormented her. She did a fantastic job. I mean, she's a Yale graduate, which is a very fine theater school. It's from Meryl Streep went there. Bobby Lewis of the Neighborhood Playhouse, of the group theater fame, was one of the professors there, and Ilya Kazan and all those greats taught there. It's a very fine school, and she's a fine actress. So look, try to get engaged with what she's doing. That's what matters. Is she fulfilling the part of Helen?
What was the TV show? I got to find out. Ellen Page was on this TV show I used to watch.
Yeah, The Umbrella Academy.
No.
Oh, well, that's a great TV series for anybody who wants to watch it.
That is one that I never heard of. But she was also Regenesis was the name of the show. So Brent and I used to watch this show Regenesis, and she was just a kid. And Brent said to me, "That girl's going to be a star someday."
Was that before Juno?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. He said she's going to be a star. Great actor. I don't really care what she identifies as. Doesn't matter to me. But yeah, I don't know.
And if you want to see a good horror movie with Elliot, watch Hard Candy, one of the better horror movies out there. Anyway, Michael, let's get off this topic and go on to the tariffs, because this is probably the single most disturbing news that I had today, because this will affect everybody.
Yes. So the Trumpster wants to initiate tariffs on all generic drugs coming from other countries. It won't start right away, but as of 2028, he wants 100% and then up to 200% tariffs on generic products, on generic drugs. He thinks that it's going to make companies set up shop here in the United States and produce medications here, whatever. Just another idiotic idea. Mark, tell them why it's an idiotic idea. What is dead naming? What does that mean?
Yeah, I was just trying to sort that out too. Akira, fill us in on what that exactly is.
We just don't know anything. We are just
but we're learning so much.
Yeah,
we're learning.
Okay,
today we're learning.
But tell them why these tariffs are a bad plan, Mark.
Well, of course, it's going to cause supply shortages, folks, because about 75% or so of these generics are produced outside of our country. In China, for example, in India, for example. And so in Trump's mercantilist notions of how to make America economically strong, he's going to take these companies, which have very, very thin margins, and one of two things is going to happen with this 100% tariff. Either they're going to stop trading with us entirely, or they're going to have to absorb the extra costs of these tariffs by, of course, passing the prices on to you and I. Now, one of the benefits of generic medicines, of course, is that they're so much cheaper than the brand names. They make all kinds of medicines accessible to us. Now, this is what Trump seems to blank out on, Michael, is that once these 100% or 200% tariffs go on, that's going to deprive people who need these medications and rely on cheap access of getting them, all because he wants to onshore the manufacture of these medicines here in the States. And they're not even sure, Michael, if it's going to have that effect, of course, because building an entire factory and the infrastructure with respect to that factory and all of the hygienic standards that they have to follow could take years to actually realize. In the meantime, we're going to be deprived of medicines that we need. It's the stupidest thing I have heard almost yet. in this entire administration, Michael, just because it's something that really tangibly affects everybody. I mean, I rely on generic medications every month. Does that mean in addition to the high fuel costs now that the Trump administration is imposing on us because of their shit policies and their shit overseas war, that now I'm going to have to additionally lay out more money for monthly medications that I wouldn't have to ordinarily if you were just a free trade capitalist? Ugh, come on, Michael. Help me.
Yeah, and these companies evidently have very slim profit margins. So some of them just won't be able to do business here. So it's just more of Trump and other politicians wanting to use the force of the state to bend people to their will.
Now, of course, Trump has been stopped by the Supreme Court from just unilaterally laying these tariffs on anybody. I'm hoping that he gets stifled once again, Michael. And they have a 2-year ramp up to this. So hopefully this is by the time he's out of office, which will be in 2028, somebody's going to rescind these tariffs if he puts them out there. Lee, thank you. You were both in my dream the other night, by the way. Okay. I was sorry to hear about your dad refusing to see the Odyssey because of a trans person, though. That's a little bit troubling because he's depriving himself of a potentially very, very good movie. And why? And Elliot's a very good actor, so why do that to yourself?
And it's a very small part, from what I understand.
Yeah, it's Sinon, right? It's the person who opens the gates for the
it's so God.
Can we just briefly talk about upward mobility as opposed to income inequality, because I think that's really important today.
Well, yeah, there was a great article in the Daily Economy about that. Of course, it's a utilitarian analysis, and those aren't my favorites, but I think they are important nonetheless. In that, the argument is that instead of focusing on whether people are equal to each other, we should be focusing on whether there is upward mobility in a given society, because it's a far better indicator of whether people are flourishing. And if you think about it, the author makes a great point, Mark, that inequalities are inevitable, and it's not just because people are unequal in intelligence, looks, talent, etc., but because people differ in their choices and their values and what they want out of life. Not everybody wants to break their ass for 60, 80 hours a week to get wealthy. They're happy with a middle class or even what people would consider a poorer lifestyle because it allows them to do the other things that they like to do.
Yeah. Go figure, Michael. And it's capitalism that enables that kind of wealth mobility, and it allows you to live as you choose. And Michael, I know the big word that these folks that are harping on income inequality like to use all the time is justice. But what is just about getting more than you've actually earned? What's just about that? What's just about taking from somebody resources that they've gained because they just have the energy and intelligence and drive to acquire those things? What's just about that? To me, it's not. To me, it's
not.
It's the free capitalist system that enables income mobility that really aspires to justice all the time, because you get what you deserve more often than not. Bad luck excluded. You get what you deserve. Nolan is overrated, says Akira Felix. That being said, I don't think his movies are bad, just not masterpieces. Okay, I think he's good.
Christopher Smith says, and Christopher Smith, you're great, but I don't. Maybe you talk like this. I normally don't talk about movies in that way. Like he says, I have a lot of problems with it, but it's undeniably really good. I don't know. I don't watch a movie and then say I have problems with it. I might say I didn't like it. Or I might even say the movie was bad, but I don't say I have problems with it. I don't know.
I say I have problems with it. I say I'll have problems with it if there's aspects of the execution of the movie that I don't like, or if the story is problematic. If the story's got holes in it, the narrative isn't told well, if the cinematography is bad, color correction bad, sound bad, acting bad. Those are problems I could have with it. but certainly not with the fucking casting. I'm not going to bitch and moan about the casting unless the casting is just wrong in the sense that the person can't realize the part. That's all I care about.
All right. So the question that you asked, no, I asked the question was about which of the Lord of the Rings movie was the best. Greg Doherty says favorite J.R.R. Tolkien movie. Read those books in middle school. So first is favorite for being first to bring back the good memories. So I guess he likes the first, the Fellowship of the Ring. Zardo Sis says he prefers the Fellowship of the Ring. Not Another Guitar Channel thinks that the Sparrow Bourgeois are ridiculous. And Ian Gilmore says the Fellowship of the Ring is the best of the three.
There you go. Great.
Marabins hated the casting of Shane.
Casting of Shane?
Yeah.
Okay. Why? Not a fan of Alan Ladd? Well, he was very short, by the way. And whenever he did scenes with anybody, he had to be put on either a series of boxes, or the other actor had to be walking in a trench, a homemade trench.
This is why we ought not to be. Let's be hesitant before speaking about movies in the sense of that they're just awful. I'm not saying there's no objective measure and no objective skill or anything like that, but it's also matters of taste. So Thomas Hagg says, I will say this to Michael, make sure you watch the extended versions. Ian Gilmore told me the other day, don't watch the extended version. He said the original is so much better. So this happened here now last night or the other night. We start watching it. The second one, the extended version, I'm thinking this will be great because it'll bring in, they probably contain more of the book in there. And then I looked it up, and sure as hell, no. With the extended version, it says there's more stuff in it that's not in the book. So whatever. I went and I said, I'm going to watch the non-extended version because I would like to get a better edition, better, more close to the originals. But, that's my opinion. All right. I got to do the Capitalists show of the day, the Capitalist thought of the day, or is it your turn?
I did it yesterday, I think.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Capitalist thought of the day. I'll do it. Then you got to ask the question.
Okay. I could do it if you're having a brain fart. I could do it.
Okay. Well, no, I'll do it. Robert Nasser. It's crucially important to have high standards, and it's hugely important to be able to enjoy things even when they don't quite meet your ideals. Thank you, Robert, and thank you for the $5.
That's especially true for objectivists because most of what you're going to see out there isn't going to meet your high ideals. So you have to enjoy you just have to enjoy it for the talent of the narrative, for the ability of the actors to render the narrative, and for all of the elements of a film to come together because they can. It might not express fully your worldview, but it's going to be a good film. It's going to be a good film.
All right. Akira Felix says extended versions are usually bad. Okay.
Yes, the extended version of The Exorcist, by the way. When I saw that, sorry, I know we're beating this horse to death, but when I saw that, I understood why Friedkin cut out all that stuff.
No, it's okay to beat the horse to death. It's not okay to beat the dead horse. Well, it's not really okay. You shouldn't beat a horse to death.
You shouldn't
either.
beat. No.
No, you don't want to do that. So
Never
my
do.
capitalist thought of the day is this, and it's going to be relevant to this type of stuff. Culture wars are, I believe, important. However, the culture we ought to be fighting for is a rational one. We ought not to be getting angry about cultural changes that have nothing to do with reason and nothing to do, with trying to hang on to a past because it's the past that we happen to like. This is true with culture wars. It's also true when it comes to things like zoning laws, when people want to pass laws to restrict building because they want to keep the character of their neighborhood, or when they want, like Thomas Woods has talked about other countries, he wants to be able to visit other countries and get the, go, I think he said Ireland or Scotland, and experience real Ireland or Scotland, basically untainted by immigrants. This is nonsensical. We ought to fight for reason. We ought to fight for a rational culture, but we ought to always keep in mind that it's the rational that we're fighting for. All right, Marcus Aurelius, take us out. Ask the question and then.
All right. So I don't know if this question's already been asked, Michael, but piggybacking on this.
That means it has, but go ahead.
This movie thing. Do you guys get all bent out of shape when you think there's been a DEI hire for a cast member, like in Nolan's movie, where they hire a black woman to play a Greek, and they're hiring a trans person to play a man? Do you have issues with that, or do you just look at the acting and the narrative, and if the person is adequate at their jobs and they suck you into the narrative, do you just play along? That would be my question to you. Make sure to go to YouTube and answer it. And make sure to like and subscribe to this channel. We need to get these ideas out there in the world. We want them to become dominant. And also don't forget, the American Capitalist Party is having its national convention September 19th and 20th in Pittsburgh, PA. Please be there and help us. We'll form our policies that we are going to take to state legislatures around the country and even to the federal government. Those are the policies that we'll be hashing out during those 2 days in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So, Michael, basically we have 23 hours before we do this again, but different. So just remember to check your premises, folks. It's what smart people do. Peace.